Freedom is an idea everyone claims to understand, but few truly experience. It is whispered in speeches, celebrated in holidays, and displayed in flags. Yet beneath the symbols lies a subtle architecture of control. Society convinces you that freedom is your birthright, but then teaches you exactly how to exercise it, how to behave, and when to obey. The very systems that claim to protect liberty are often the same ones that limit it. Laws, regulations, and norms shape behavior in invisible ways. What appears as choice is usually predetermined, carefully orchestrated to maintain order while ensuring that the population feels empowered. You are free to choose within boundaries you cannot see. The illusion is so seamless that questioning it feels rebellious, unnatural. When your perception is constrained, even the smallest choices are guided by unseen hands. This is the art of subtle social control. Every institution participates in this invisible network. Schools teach obedience alongside knowledge. Media directs attention while molding emotions. Corporations dictate desire while masquerading as providers. Each layer reinforces the others, creating a web so fine you barely notice it. Social norms, often seen as natural, are tools of control. They tell you how to dress, speak, and act. Deviating feels risky, even dangerous, because humans instinctively fear exclusion. The fear of being judged becomes another form of self-discipline, quietly aligning you with the system. Freedom is also sold as a commodity. Consumer culture convinces you that buying the right products, achieving the right status, or following trends is liberation. But each purchase, each approval, subtly reinforces the social architecture that keeps you in place. Even technology, celebrated as a tool of liberation, serves dual purposes. It connects, but it also monitors. Each app, each social media platform, each notification subtly nudges behavior, shaping how you think, interact, and perceive reality. The educational system plays a critical role. You are trained to accept authority, memorize information, and follow rules. Curiosity is tolerated, but only within the boundaries pre-approved by those in power. Independent thinking is rare because it threatens predictability. Political structures mimic freedom perfectly. You are given the illusion of choice between parties, policies, and ideologies. Yet the framework itself never changes. Every debate, every vote, every campaign is a performance designed to keep participation within the system. Social hierarchies amplify this control. Class, privilege, and status are tools for managing expectations and behavior. You are taught to respect hierarchies, to aspire toward them, or to resent those above you, keeping energy focused on the wrong targets. Fear is woven into the fabric of control. Fear of failure, ridicule, unemployment, and isolation ensures compliance. Anxiety keeps you cautious and obedient, convinced that stepping outside the rules is dangerous, even if those rules were never meant for your benefit. Media is the silent enforcer. It highlights certain events, ignores others, and shapes perception without revealing the full context. What you think is truth is often selective narrative, carefully chosen to maintain equilibrium and prevent critical awareness. Even community and belonging are subtly leveraged. Group identities, shared beliefs, and social pressure enforce conformity. Those who step out of line feel the weight of isolation, which often outweighs the desire for personal freedom. Advertising intensifies the illusion. It convinces you that consumption equals freedom, that ownership equates to autonomy. Desire is manufactured, and in fulfilling it, you participate in the very system that controls your perception of choice. Technology also normalizes surveillance. You voluntarily share information, believing it is harmless or necessary. Each data point reinforces predictions about your behavior, allowing the architects of control to anticipate and influence your decisions without force. Even leisure is structured. Entertainment, sports, and media are designed to occupy attention and regulate emotion. You believe you are relaxing, but in reality, your responses are measured, guided, and subtly conditioned. Education, media, politics, commerce, and technology create overlapping layers of control. Alone, each seems innocuous. Together, they form a seamless structure that directs behavior, shapes thought, and defines acceptable expression. Public discourse is designed to appear spontaneous. Social media amplifies outrage and division, keeping energy focused on ephemeral conflicts rather than structural control. Attention becomes the currency, while your awareness of the larger system fades. Norms around morality and behavior are reinforced subtly through culture. Deviations provoke judgment or ridicule. People internalize the expectation to self-regulate, creating compliance without coercion. Social conditioning becomes its own enforcer. Even history is curated. The stories you are told emphasize certain achievements, heroes, and villains while omitting inconvenient truths. Memory and identity are shaped to reinforce existing power structures, making rebellion or critical reflection difficult. Ideologies serve as soft cages. They define acceptable thought, legitimate argument, and permitted belief. Questioning these boundaries triggers social, emotional, or professional consequences, ensuring that freedom remains confined within invisible walls. Power sustains itself not by brute force, but by subtlety. When people accept their own constraints, obey social norms, and align with cultural expectations, control becomes nearly invisible. The most effective domination is never noticed until it is too late. Even freedom itself is framed to support the system. Liberty is defined by what is permitted, never by the absence of constraint. This creates a paradox where people feel free, yet operate entirely within the limits designed for them. Public crises reinforce obedience. Threats, real or fabricated, prompt calls for security, regulation, and compliance. The system exploits these moments, expanding influence while maintaining the narrative that you are safe, cared for, and protected. The invisible architecture ensures that most people never question their reality. They accept norms, policies, and cultural narratives as natural, believing that deviation would be dangerous, selfish, or futile. This is control disguised as common sense, yet cracks in the system are inevitable. Awareness, once it arises, begins in small ways: a question, a doubt, a moment of reflection. Those small sparks can ignite perception, slowly revealing the structure of invisible control. The subtlety is the genius of the system. It hides in plain sight. Freedom is performed, social rules are obeyed unconsciously, and control is perpetuated through ordinary routines. The game is ongoing, unnoticed by most, effective beyond imagination. Those who begin to observe the patterns notice the contradictions. They see how choice is curated, how consent is manufactured, and how social expectation guides behavior more than law ever could. Observation becomes the first step toward genuine freedom. And yet, power is not infallible. It relies on belief, compliance, and distraction. Remove these, and the structure begins to falter. Awareness is the silent threat that cannot be legislated or censored. Even a single mind that perceives the system differently becomes dangerous. It cannot be fully controlled. It sees patterns, questions authority, and refuses to accept the scripts handed down by centuries of social design. The true secret of freedom is that it is inseparable from perception. Control persists only where perception is manipulated, where obedience is unconscious, and where distraction dominates attention. Awareness is the key to dismantling the invisible walls. Once you notice the patterns, the illusion of freedom fades, replaced by clarity. You see the design, the purpose, and the machinery that has guided behavior all along. And in that seeing, true freedom begins. Not as an abstract idea, but as a conscious state of awareness. Once awareness begins, the world starts to appear differently. Every decision, every habit, and every rule is no longer neutral. It becomes part of a larger architecture. You notice patterns, repetitions, and invisible forces shaping your thoughts long before you act. The first revelation is always uncomfortable. Realizing that freedom was partially scripted shakes the foundation of trust in everything you once accepted. Authority no longer commands respect automatically. It demands scrutiny. Systems of control adapt quickly. They sense hesitation, doubt, and curiosity, then deploy distractions, narratives, and fear to reassert dominance. It is a subtle war, fought not with weapons but with perception. People who awaken to these patterns are often ostracized or ridiculed. Society punishes observation and rewards compliance. Isolation is an effective weapon. It ensures that awareness remains lonely and fragmented. Fear is leveraged once again. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of failure, fear of chaos. The system understands that fear is not just emotion. It is a mechanism of obedience, silently recalibrating behavior. Even social media becomes a battlefield. Each platform teaches you to respond in predictable ways, amplifying emotion over reflection. Outrage, distraction, and division keep collective awareness shallow while appearing vibrant and participatory. Freedom itself is redefined to fit the narrative of control. It is framed as a privilege, a reward, or a luxury, rather than a natural state. People accept limitations voluntarily because they are convinced that true liberty is unattainable. Education continues its subtle conditioning. While it teaches skills, it rarely teaches discernment. Critical thinking is permitted, but only if it does not challenge the foundation. The system rewards efficiency, not insight. Economics also binds perception. Debt, employment, and consumption create invisible chains that seem like normal life. Survival occupies attention, leaving little mental space for questioning deeper truths. Even rebellion can be controlled. Dissent is often co-opted, diluted, and commodified. Social movements can appear powerful while remaining contained. Their energy redirected into safe channels that reinforce the illusion of freedom. Symbols of power, like money, authority, and fame, distract from substance. People chase status rather than sovereignty, mistaking influence for independence and missing the hidden constraints behind the pursuit. Media narratives reinforce division. Left and right, liberal and conservative, believer and skeptic, these conflicts are amplified to ensure energy is spent fighting neighbors rather than understanding systems. Division is an effective lubricant for control. Crises are the perfect tool for manipulation. Public emergencies justify surveillance, regulation, and obedience. Fear convinces people to surrender agency voluntarily, believing it is rational, necessary, or protective. The very architecture of society is designed to normalize participation. Voting, consumption, employment, entertainment, all are ritualized forms of cooperation with the system. Each action reinforces patterns you scarcely notice. Even morality can be subtly directed. Social norms dictate who deserves judgment, reward, or exclusion. People self-police, enforcing compliance without force while believing it emerges organically. Power thrives in invisibility. The fewer people see the strings, the smoother the control. Authority does not need to dominate. It simply structures circumstances so that individuals willingly fall into line. Technology accelerates this effect. Every search, click, and interaction feeds predictions, guiding behavior with precision. The more connected you are, the more visible your patterns and the more manipulable your choices. Culture itself becomes camouflage. Art, fashion, music, and entertainment are designed to occupy minds and emotions, shaping perception subtly while masquerading as freedom of expression. Even friendships and communities can serve the system. Peer pressure, shared norms, and social expectation encourage conformity. Belonging becomes another mechanism of compliance, reinforcing invisible boundaries. Information scarcity is manufactured too. The system controls access to knowledge, presenting some truths while concealing others. The result is a population that believes itself informed while remaining unaware. History is curated. Achievements, failures, heroes, and villains are emphasized selectively, shaping collective memory to reinforce obedience and loyalty to the structures of power. Ideologies serve as soft cages. People are free to argue, debate, and identify, but only within frames pre-approved by the system. Outside them lies discomfort, risk, or exclusion, discouraging true intellectual freedom. Even leisure is structured to prevent reflection. Amusement occupies time and attention, dulling curiosity. When the mind is entertained, it is less likely to observe the subtle mechanisms shaping its reality. Yet, cracks exist. Observation spreads quietly. One person noticing a pattern becomes 2, then 10. Awareness is contagious. Small awakenings gradually weaken the invisible chains. The first sign of real freedom is self-recognition. Understanding that many constraints are invisible allows the mind to question previously accepted truths, reframing perception and restoring agency. Awakening feels lonely initially. The world around you continues to function as if nothing has changed. Yet inside, a clarity emerges that cannot be suppressed by routines, distractions, or social pressure. Power fears awakening more than rebellion. Awareness is contagious, unpredictable, and cannot be legislated or policed completely. Those who perceive the system differently become ungovernable by design. As awareness grows, fear loses its power. Once the mechanisms are seen, their influence diminishes. You recognize the strategies, understand the motivations, and reclaim choice. Fear no longer dictates behavior. Observation does. Freedom, in its truest sense, is no longer external. It exists in perception, in awareness, in the conscious decision to participate deliberately rather than unconsciously. The illusion fades when the mind refuses to comply blindly. Control always depends on belief. Once belief is withdrawn, structures weaken. The system may appear strong, but it relies entirely on cooperation, attention, and compliance. Awareness dissolves the foundation beneath its feet. The dirty game continues only while the majority remains unaware. As more minds awaken, patterns unravel. The same institutions that seemed eternal begin to feel fragile, exposed, and desperate. And finally, true freedom emerges not through destruction, but through observation. The walls never needed to be broken physically. They simply needed to be recognized, understood, and consciously chosen not to obey. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. The realization is quiet, powerful, and irreversible. The system survives only when belief endures, and awareness is the silent force that dissolves it.